bring jobs back to the country?
Well, first of all, you have to get rid of these free trade agreements. You have to do it from square one, because in the way our businesses work, the way our finance works, they're not concerned about what jobs are here in America, what wealth is here in America. They're concerned on what they can make the greatest amount of profit is on. And what has made what was so popular about progressive republicanism in the past is that their solutions that were put in place so that Americans come first, your business comes second. So if you can be productive, you can be wealthy in what you're doing, congratulations. But these rules and regulations are in place to make sure that our country succeeds, our people succeed, and our communities flourish. I'm not about to willing to destroy our country for the sense of, well, it's not good for the markets if we do that. I'm not concerned about the markets.
So the old line that the Constitution is not a suicide pact applies here?
What was that?
The Constitution is not a suicide pact?
No, the Constitution is not a suicide pact.
Okay.
It's Americans come first. That's what we should be doing, especially in this day and age. I'm not talking about being isolationist in terms of doing everything here or leaving everything here. I'm okay with trading outside of our boundaries. I'm just not okay with simply sending our jobs overseas just to have these services and goods brought back into our country. I mean, you're talking about that. That's why IT took a big hit. Because when we got our trade agreements open with India, they're saying, well, instead of paying developers here in the U.S. for $30 or $35 an hour, we can pay them in India for $5 an hour. That's how much you make. They make about $5 an hour.
It's amazing that's what's so bad for trade is so good for new media. And just an example with this show, in our short time here, people have listened. You know, I do the analytics, and people have listened to this show all over the world. And in the global economy, it's just crazy that what is so good for information, what's so good for media, alternative media, can be such a huge detriment for actual more important things, I guess. We are halfway through the program. We have to take a real quick break. I think we're going to play P.O.'s favorite PSA in a second.
You can try to guess which one that is.
Be sure to check out MacielForCongress.com, CoalitionRadio.us, on Facebook, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on Twitter at Coalition_radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Heading out on the town tonight? Be sure to log on to ProvidenceNightOut.com and don't forget to check their cell phone app. That's ProvidenceNightOut.com.
Hello, my name is Jim Gray, and I am a judge of the Superior Court in California and a former federal prosecutor in Los Angeles. I would like to talk to you for a moment about marijuana. Did you know that since the federal government first banned marijuana in 1937, usage in this country has actually gone up by about 4,000%? Or did you know that in the Netherlands, where adults are allowed to possess small amounts of marijuana and buy it from government-regulated businesses, fewer adults and fewer teenagers smoke marijuana than here in our country? Or that an American is arrested on marijuana charges every 38 seconds? If you are wondering if any of this makes sense, you are not alone. To find out more, contact the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org. Thank you, and good luck to us all.
Hey everybody, it's Tony Jones. You know, when I'm not here yakking about politics, I spin records. That's right, if you like good old-fashioned rock and roll radio the way God intended it to be, then tune in to The Tony Jones Show. The information's online at tonyjones.org. That's tonyjones.org.
I found a picture of you.
13 Folds is your definitive source for cannabis culture, with a print magazine, radio show, live events, and so much more. Check them out online at 13folds.com. That's the number 13, FOLDS.com.
Tony Jones here. You're tuned in to the Coalition, coalitionradio.us. With me in studio, P.O. Taxpayer.
I'm bent but not broken.
Christine is here. Chris, good evening.
Good evening.
Our in-studio guest, Jonathan Maciel, independent candidate for Congress, Rhode Island's 1st District. You can check him out online, macielforcongress.com. Where do we leave off before the break?
I think we were starting to really break down free trade. I think, Jonathan, you're right to like a laser to focus in on this. You know, you think about Rhode Island as the birthplace of American manufacturing and how little is made here. And I don't know if that it's too late to bring things back, but to a certain degree, there is a possibility as these tiger economies start to mature and the people over in these countries start to decide, well, you know, we want a life too. So, you know,
are you saying Rhode Island could be the next Bangladesh?
That's right.
If we work hard, we could move up to that. So tell us more. Jonathan, give us some more information.
Well, Rhode Island particularly does have a chance of getting back in manufacturing, but from what I've seen in terms of, at least through other companies I've worked with and seeing the large-scale development plans going into the future, is that if we're not aggressive with this now, it could never come back. Because if once Asia becomes more expensive, the next plan is South America. Mm-hmm. Once South America becomes more expensive, the plan after that is Africa. They've got this stuff planned out for decades and decades in advance.
Right.
You know, you have to be aggressive in going after this. And the notion, one thing I like to point out is that Apple used the excuse that they don't have the required skilled labor here in America to do the training, to do the work. And my response to that is, why don't you just train them? You think 12 and 14-year-old Chinese kids knew how to do this right away? If you can train them, why can't you train workers here?
Well, maybe they're prodigies. I mean, have you seen them play violin?
Yeah, I know. They could be super geniuses. They could all be super geniuses.
No, more to the point, they have small hands. They have small hands.
Yeah.
That's why Mexican women and children were being hired in the 80s, because they have small fingers and they don't create trouble.
Well, where does the responsibility lie, if any, with the American consumer? The American consumer is now hooked, that's fair to say, on cheap imports.
They've made you hooked into that, because over time, as these jobs went, as our revenues in the country went down, we've lost public jobs in the process. We've lost millions of public jobs over the years, too. You're forced into lower and lower pay grades, especially now that the private sector is literally controlling the entire market. They don't have to compete with the public sector right now. The public sector historically normally paid very well, very good benefits, and the private sector had to compete with them. Otherwise, no one, the best people available would rather work in the public sector if you're not paying for them. Right. So once you took that away, you sent them all to the private sector. You took the big complex manufacturing job, you shipped them overseas. Now you have low-skill labor as the only thing that's left here. And that low-scale labor it's not going to pay you very well. So you're literally squeezed in your budget as much as possible, because it's not like the CPI went down.
Right. Well, low-skill labor actually used to pay slightly better because the minimum wage was higher as a proportion of the general economy. And that was one of the suggestions I put for the Rhode Island
on Go Local Prov with the Rhode Island State Legislature about just put the minimum wage up to $9.50, set it to rise the CPI. We'll be right on set with inflation, and it'll be set that way forever.
It should be indexed. And there's, it's been pointed out fairly enough by people that you can't just keep raising wages and expect businesses to necessarily absorb the cost. The flip side of that is that a lot of these businesses have let their pay range get distorted in favor of upper middle management. Right. So there are now more people making $300,000 a year who used to make $100,000 a year. They're not necessarily 3 times as valuable to their company. It's that they're better at talking their way into higher salaries.
Well, I think that they're catering to their higher end staff because they want that higher end staff to stay. Yeah. So when you're talking about something that's low skill, especially we're looking at our fast food strikers right now, they'd gladly fire them all at once and just hire brand new staff. Mm-hmm. If that's what it comes down to, and that's what it goes for where the price increases go to. They're going to go to who they like, not necessarily who they need. And if you have it set to increase by the percent increase in the CPI, it's a gradual increase. It's not something you have to do for them all at once. But coming with that minimum wage increase, the idea, the argument against it is that, well, it's going to send more to the bottom line of the business, so on, and it's it's going to hurt that business. And part of my compromise inside the suggestions was, while we're increasing the minimum wage, we want to compete with our neighbors too. Rhode Island's not a big state. If you want to move your business out, it only takes you a half hour of driving and you're out of the state.
Right.
So in the process, decrease our business tax from 9% to 6% and decrease our sales tax from 7% to 5%. You're already doing better off than you are with your neighbors. You're not cutting it to zero, because with Rhode Island, we are the smallest state in the country, on top of being the second most densely populated state in the country. We have a lot of people in this state, and you don't have a lot of room for big scale manufacturing or big scale farming. Your state is consumer driven.
We are really just a retail economy, aren't we?
It is. We're a retail economy
now,
in
yes.
this state. I mean, even best case scenario, we follow through with my plans, getting all our manufacturing back here. What's the best case scenario for Rhode Island compared to a state like New York or Texas or Alabama or Tennessee that has this huge swath of land available to put really large-scale manufacturing jobs in? They're really complicated to get it all set in one place.
We only would need a couple of
you really
big, large-scale
need
manufacturers, to be honest.
programs to be started here. And at that point, I think we'd be pretty well off.
Or just one huge Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah. Putting money into the hands of people who have very little money, they will run out and spend it on stuff they need.
Yeah,
which helps the economy.
Well, the multiplier effect on lower income people is profound. Ultimately, what's crazy about our situation on a local level is the regressive nature of one of our primary sources of tax revenue, which is the sales tax.
Right.
So we're penalizing the people that we are purporting to help through transfer payments inefficiently distributed by a corrupt government. It's insanity what's happening. Whereas if that money were allowed to stay in the private sector, the multiplier effect would be much more profound. More wealth would be generated. To wit, as part of your proposal, where I'll agree with you in one sense, having read extensively, and your website, by the way, kudos to you on your website. It's very, in the words of our former president, it's very detail orientated.
Thank you.
But you don't go nuclear. But you have very decided opinions on tax structure, because I think we all realize at this point, whereas our country used to be driven by fiscal policy, tax policy is the new fiscal policy. Mm-hmm. So, on one hand, you propose on a federal level reducing corporate tax rates, yet where I might have back and forth with you is your willingness to raise the higher end of the personal tax rates. But talk to me about the corporate tax rate and how you feel about that.
My issue is that in the country where we want as many people to have a job as possible, I really don't want to feel like I'm putting an additional strain on business in this country, especially in the state. My thought is that as much money as we can afford that you make in your business should stay with your business. What I think should be taxed is if your business made a lot of money and you're taking all the profits from that business as your own personal income, that personal income is taxed. So if you don't want that money taken from your business, put it to someplace that's productive for your business. Expand your business. Right, hire additional staff for your business. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Reinvest it into your business.
And reinvest it in the United States.
Exactly. And that goes again with the proposals for trade agreements. All this comes together in terms of rewarding business in our country, promoting business in our country. And I don't want to say forcing business in our country, but it almost has to get to that point.
No, but that gets at an interesting thing. We've been told by the people who are promoting lower taxes on the wealthy that they're the job creators, and if we don't let them have lots of money, how are they supposed to create jobs? Well, you're basically
keep your money in your business.
Yeah,
your business will create the jobs.
Exactly. If the business needs more employees, the business will hire more employees, and it's got nothing to do with whether John Q. millionaire keeps more of it in his pocket or not. He's not going to take it out of his pocket once it's there. If it's not still in his business, it's in his pocket, and that's that.
What surprised me the most about the tax structure that we have right now, it's like people don't learn from history. This isn't the first time that trickle-down economics was brought forward. If people are confused about this, they think that was a new thing. Look up the tax history or the history of the 1920s. Mm-hmm. They did it right there and then. They cut the top rate taxes in half with the same thing. They were saying, well, revenue won't be impacted because that money that's being given back to these wealthies and go back in the form of job creations for people they're going to spend, and our revenue isn't going to change. But